Hello, and welcome to the Priorities Now podcast series. My name is Jim Richardson. I'm a distinguished technologist at Bielak Enterprise. My guest today is Shlomo Bielak, CTO at Benchmark Corp. Hey, welcome back, Shlomo. I'm excited to dive into today's discussion.
Thanks, glad to be here.
Let's dive into the challenges people have on multi-cloud and hybrid cloud deployments. If you look at all of the major cloud providers, they have their own bevy of services available. They're very much like each other, but they're different APIs, different interfaces, different capabilities. And then somebody wants to extend their cloud into on-prem and have a true hybrid cloud. How do you reconcile these different services and different capabilities across the cloud and what you're deploying on-prem?
When you're answering this, did the business give you more money? And not just for infrastructure, did the business give you more money to have more people? Because if you take on another data center and another data set or technology sprawl, right, you have more things to manage, but you're not bringing in more people. The only thing you're going to do is make a concerning mandate that people can't adopt safely. The reason being is when I take someone else's data center, they're going to have their own stack, right? Because that's what they're providing to you. If you have one on your on-premise already and you have another one and they're disparate, this is going to be the fall of anybody who wants to sustain and scale. My recommendation and how is build the model for your on-premise and the cloud so that when you adopt, you don't get additional mandate. It's just an extension of the one you already have. If you have an on-premise data center and you have a cloud data center and they have two different models that are disparate, you have two entirely separate management and operational nightmares, which is with the same team. So what you're actually saying to do, let's fix our inefficiencies in process. This is going to be a big kicker. By adding another data center and technology stack to manage while you still have the existing one. Oh, well, that's going to go well. So I always take the approach where if I fix how I do things today, and then I extend them to your other use case, which doesn't introduce technology sprawl, it introduces use cases. I can configure my infrastructure, I can create my infrastructure, and I can release applications in the same model from on-premise to wherever it is that you're trying to send it. That's the only way you're going to be able to sustain and scale, unless you're adding headcount, which isn't generally part of the projects that most people are getting. They're hoping to change things, and it's easier, but having more of a mandate.
One of the reasons people are really enamored by going to the cloud is it's a complete pay-as-you-go as a model. So can you expand a little bit on the capabilities of what GreenLake can bring to pay-as-you-go?
When you run as an R&D organization, which is generally meaning I do unplanned work all the time, R&D actually doesn't try not to plan, but they can't plan in many respects because customer requirements come in at all times. Customer issues come in at all times, and where we focus our business changes at all times, right? Because you're trying to react to a very agile market. So what essentially happens is I'm terribly late. That's technically your starting point. And then you have to wait for things. That was predominantly the reason why you want someone else to do something for you. When you approach it from a GreenLake perspective, it's more about if I have not planned and I need gear and it's already there and I can just consume it, you already move that bottleneck or that pain point that highlights the lack of planning that's forced onto businesses. In some cases, it's just that happens. In other cases, you can't prevent it. But from an R&D perspective or from an infrastructure perspective, if what I need is ready for me to consume, I've already removed the blame game. There's no blame game anymore because technically, if a department is late and then they wait 2 more days or 3 weeks or whatever it's going to be, 60 days for COVID delayed delivery, you're going to point at the other person because it's logical. You won't point and say, well, I didn't plan this anyways, so you didn't really have any time to order it. It's going to be, no, we waited 3 months because of them and 1 month because of me. So GreenLake's approach here is if you need to consume and grow, it's going to be there for you. If your unplanned work happens, so what? Use what's available to you. So by putting that in place from a contract perspective and having things ready from a spare capacity perspective, you solve the largest issue, which is you don't want to wait for gear.
So Shlomo, HPE has a lot of customers out there today, and they're struggling around how do I make that first step? So what would you suggest for the HPE customers to engage and start down that path of a digital transformation?
Okay, I think a lot of organizations are there today. From an infrastructure perspective, let's start there. Let's say I create an infrastructure as code provider for my HP gear, or use one that's already there on the market, right? They're available. I find playbooks for configuring the system. You can do that all today. You can bring it all together. There is providers and infrastructure as code that applies to VMware as well. So you're moving up the stack. I just went from infrastructure now to hypervisor. If you have a consistent method for infrastructure to hypervisor to the applications themselves, those are the types of things we do for our customers. I need to take a model and apply it to what you have so that the outcome you're looking for can span data centers.
Fantastic. So you kind of mentioned it, but I want to just get your opinion of what does good look like? What does it look like after a company has successfully made this transition? They've got some of their infrastructure running on a hybrid cloud internally. Maybe they're in another cloud or multiple clouds. What does good look like?
So it depends on how you interpret good or bad. The statistics that we have today basically say 70 to 75% of all these transformational initiatives in the globe fail, and the money spent and lost is about $900 billion. My approach here is you need to work with someone that has had a success or a failure they learned from. So a failure that they learned from generally means they've recovered from something that they didn't achieve, but they had to fix it without money. I had that in my past too. I spent $25 million, didn't work out, but then I had to actually make that $25 million success without the money. So those are the leaders and organizations you need to work with. Smoke and mirrors is only something you can keep for, let's say, a year. Beyond that, at some point, your competitors that did succeed are going to take your market share. And I kind of feel like we need to get out of that mode. Smoke and mirrors only undermines businesses. You can say openly, we're having challenges. The market is immature in this space. I need expertise to get us there. And I need those people who failed super hard and then corrected themselves so I can not do the same thing you just did and try to save the 900 billion. I use an analogy here, which is a battle scar only looks good or cool when it's healed. It's really gross when it's fresh. So if you can solve the part where you're adding to the mandate of organizations that are already struggling, and you build it in such a way that the toil and the pain that people go through on a day-to-day basis of just nonsense, you will reach what good is. Good is I have on-premise. Good is I have cloud. Good is I have whatever data centers that I do today. They all function in a single way. What I mean by that is how I release, how I build, how I configure, how I maintain. Day one, day two activities should be homogeneous across all your data systems. If you don't do that and you don't take automation and orchestrate it, what essentially happens is you hire talent, that talent works really hard, their scars get bigger and they leave. You get high attrition. Technically, all transformation is built upon talent. And if you don't take care of the talent and you build bigger mandates for these awesome, awesome people that can make this happen, at some point they just say, I'm out. They'll go find a contract somewhere else. So good is a consistent model for all your data centers to deliver infrastructure, to deliver applications in a single manner. You need an orchestration layer end to end to bring it all together. And shared responsibility is something we teach our children, but we have a very difficult time doing it at work. It makes sense. Work with people's bailiwicks. Make sure you incorporate their needs and don't just say shift left and development do it all. Because trust me, being from R&D, we don't want the security side to own it. We don't want the production issues and own it. We want to commit code, but at the same time, we really want you to come to the table and have a shared responsibility, shared orchestration capability so that we can actually get to your systems too. So I kind of seeing that as one of the largest challenges we face.
Fantastic. And that really highlighted one of my next questions around talent and the skills needed to embrace this new way of doing IT, having it across, my hybrid cloud, my on-prem stuff into multiple clouds, maybe changing to a DevOps model where I'm releasing code a lot more differently this shared model or shared responsibility being spread around, what kind of skills does an organization either need to go out and hire for or train internally or augment with outside help?
I'll give the secret. This one's actually really unique, and I'm not going to answer it the way you think. I actually don't think it's a talent issue. I think organizations that don't have self-development hours allocated will never have the talent pool. So it's kind of, if I get it right, the byproduct of it is one, yeah, it's high availability. Yeah, it's resilience. That's cool. Customer experience is great. People are happy. It's a great show. But the one that no one talks about is the free time they get to work on self-development or innovative things, right? That's where Google wins. That's why Google attracts talent. It's not so much that they have the talent and talent attracts talent. It's more of they actually make talent by having self-development time, which is a byproduct of you're not fighting fires. You got to solve the fires by creating automation and orchestration to handle day one and day two activities of a data center or cloud, however you look at it. At that point, you can then fundamentally support an ecosystem for talent pools because there's not that much talent in the pool to begin with because everybody has the same trouble. We're fighting fires, so we don't create talent pool. And without talent pool, who's going to fix it? It's a terrible situation. Canada's a little worse because we have people drawing on our talent pool from other countries due to COVID and remote work. But if we change as an organization and say 5% of my day or 10% of my day is for self-development, you're going to create that social of fortune that's going to help uplift your team. And he's going to be super dedicated and loyal.
Hey, thanks, Shlomo. This has been super informative and a lot of fun. If any listeners out there want to learn a little bit more, you can send in a quick email to info@benchmarkcorp.com or call 416-505-5272. And somebody from the Benchmark team will get right back to you.
Thanks, Jim, for having me.